little tribute to Sly. Sly Stone, he was born Sylvester Stewart. One of my all-time favorite musicians and bands, Sly and the Family Stone. I'm just gonna say a few things. I'm just rambling. This is, I would love to do tributes to all the great artists, and I think Sly was one of the greatest. I'm gonna try to explain why I think that is, and I wanted to start with a question I just posed to Perplexity AI, just to get start the ball rolling here. So what I asked was, why was Sylvester Stewart, aka Sly Stone, one of the greatest musicians of the 20th century? What makes Sly and the Family Stone so good? Is their music timeless? Man, I had a lot of typos there, but it still figured out what I was trying to ask. So this is what AI said. This is Perplexity AI. This is one of the AI systems, right? If you go on Google these days, Google has Gemini, right? If you Google, you can basically ask, do a deep dive with Google Gemini on any question you have. All these AI systems apparently do slightly different things, but they're all more or less the same. So Sylvester Stewart, known as Sly Stone, is widely regarded as one of the greatest musicians of the 20th century because of his groundbreaking innovation, genre-defying artistry, and lasting influence on popular music. Why Sly Stone was one of the greatest? Genre fusion and innovation. Sly and the Family Stone pioneered a unique blend of funk, soul, psychedelic rock, gospel, and R&B, creating the quote-unquote psychedelic soul sound that reshaped American music. Their work was pivotal in the development of funk and influenced later genres, including hip-hop and pop. If you listen, they started in like 66. Now, if you listen to some of the later funk bands, including Jackson 5 were not really a funk band, but they definitely were influenced by Sly and the Family Stone. Earth, Wind and Fire, Parliament, George Clinton and Parliament of Funk, all these different artists, even up to the present day, have been influenced by Sly and the Family Stone. Many hip-hop artists sampled Sly's music, so you can hear we'd have to go down the list, but many of them sampled his music, and he said something funny toward the end of his life, which was, maybe I'm gonna sample the samplers now. Right? It's funny. Social and political impact. The band's lyrics tackled themes of unity, equality, and social justice, most famously in songs like Everyday People, the song I just sang a little bit of, and Stand. This direct engagement with the issues of the era made their music both a soundtrack and a catalyst for change. So Sly and the Family Stone, they were right on the cusp of that change that happened, and it was a lot of the musicians in the 60s, including Brian Wilson, who also just died, had a very big impact. And Sly and the Family Stone came right at that time. That was a very pivotal year in music, 65, 66. Like the Beatles came out with Rubber Soul and Revolver. The Beach Boys had Pet Sounds. There was the Byrds. There was all this, that there was a psychedelic rock movement. It's also called acid rock, and Sly and the Family Stone came right in that moment, and they were like, I would say it was kind of like an alliance of these different musical bands. The different bands were really leading the consciousness movement of the 60s, right? They were the heads, they were the ringleaders, you might say, the band leaders of this shift in consciousness that has really really did change the world in many, many ways. You might say, well, the world, the world's a mess, still is a mess, right? But if it hadn't been for that music, it might be more of a mess than it is, right? In a way, Sly's music, his lyrics, the messages he was putting out there, especially in the '60s, had a very big impact on people's, not just their, their minds, their psyches, their consciousness, but their spiritual awareness, because it was very spiritual music. It came out of gospel. It came out of church music. Before Sly and the Family Stone, Sly was playing with his brothers and sisters in a gospel band in his church. I think it might have just been him and Rose, and his sister Rose and his brother Freddie. I'm not sure exactly because he had other siblings, but diversity and integration. Sly and the Family Stone was the first major American rock band to feature a racially integrated mixed gender lineup. This was revolutionary at the time and sent a powerful message about inclusion and collaboration. And I think that was one of the beautiful things too about. There was another band that I love as well around the same time. They were actually before Sly and the Family Stone, and I'm sure Sly knew about the band, but it was Love, the band Love. I'm sure they had an influence on each other, but Sly and the Family Stone obviously was bigger than Love. Love is not remembered nearly as much as some of the other bands of the '60s, although I think Love was a great band as well. Love also had a mixed, was black and white members. Interesting factoid is that the Black Panther Party wanted Sly to get rid of the white members in his band and change his management. It's kind of funny, and I think Sly said, no, nope, can't do that, can't break up the family. And I'll say that as well, is that it really was like a family. They really were almost like, it wasn't a cult, but it was coming together of people from diverse backgrounds to make just beautiful music together. And in a way, it was like a cult. It was like a religious movement. That's why I look at it. But it was not it was not Christian. It was not anything. It was just it was like universal spiritual values. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, I don't think Sly ever talked about Jesus or Christianity in his music, which is interesting, but I think part of it was they knew that their music had to go out to millions of people, and they didn't want to turn off people. They wanted to include people, right? They didn't want to exclude people. And for a lot of people, talking about Jesus, even to this day, talking about Jesus, talking about religion, rubs people the wrong way. And talking about universal values goes off better, right? And that's what Sly did. That's part of his genius, is that he realized that, he recognized that. Musical excellence and influence. Sly's songwriting, production, and multi-instrumental talents set new standards. The band's energetic live performances, innovative use of rhythm and bass, notably Larry Graham's slap bass technique. He developed this technique that got used now, has been used by many, many different artists. But he developed that slap bass technique apparently because they didn't have a drummer at one point, so he did the rhythm with the slapping. And infectious hooks inspired artists from Miles Davis and George Clinton to Prince, Michael Jackson, Public Enemy, and beyond. Miles Davis was a big fan. And that says a lot, because Miles Davis is also considered to be a musical genius. If you think of some of the great musical geniuses of that era, Miles Davis, obviously John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Sly, Stevie Wonder. There's a bunch of them, a whole bunch of them, right? That we could point to. And the really interesting thing is that Sly had Jimi Hendrix as well. Sly had a very big impact on Miles Davis. Now I wonder if we could ask. I could ask right now. Actually, did Sly Stone ever meet Jimi Hendrix? Did Sly Stone ever meet Jimi Hendrix? Did they influence each other? Let's see what it says. Because Jimi Hendrix also, is one of my favorite. I think he's one of the great. Yes, Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix did meet and share the stage, and they influenced each other to some extent. According to Sly Stone's 2023 memoir, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, they appeared together in 1968 at New York's Fillmore East, where Sly and the Family Stone played a set before Hendrix's band, The Experience, performed. So they opened for Hendrix. Hendrix was definitely the biggest act, I think, in the 60s. And that is shown by the fact that at Woodstock, Sly and the Family Stone went on at like 3 a.m. and Hendrix kind of got the prime. Well, he actually did not get the prime slot because he went on like early Monday morning when people were already leaving or had left. But I think that Hendrix was the biggest selling artist of 1968-69, and he so that makes sense. But when it comes to influence, Sly might have had just as much, if not more, of an influence than Hendrix. Sly recalls that after their energetic performance, Hendrix came on and tore the place up, showcasing his extraordinary guitar skills. They also hung out occasionally, though not extensively, and shared mutual respect for each other's musicianship. Sly described Hendrix as having the ability to make sounds that I could not even have imagined before I heard them. That was a quote. There were plans for jam sessions, though some were missed due to Hendrix's other commitments. Sly also recounted anecdotes involving Hendrix in social settings, indicating a personal connection beyond just professional encounters. While direct musical collaborations were limited, both artists were pioneers who pushed the boundaries of rock, soul, and funk in the late 1960s. Jimi Hendrix is not known as a funk artist, hardly as a soul artist either. He was more straight ahead rock and blues, rhythm and blues. But did Hendrix have any funk? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Maybe he did. Their innovative approaches influenced the broader musical landscape, and their mutual exposure likely contributed to their evolving sounds. Fans and historians often imagine the creative possibilities had they collaborated more extensively. Anyway, that was a little tangent we just went on. Let's go back. So, what makes Sly and the Family Stone so good? Iconic songs and albums, hits like Dance to the Music, Everyday People, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, and albums such as Stand. Stand was like their breakthrough album. I think it came out in like 67 or 68. Before that, their first two albums were kind of got like lukewarm responses. But then later, they, people said, "Oh, these are great too," And there's a Riot going on. Came out, I think, in 70. Are considered classics, blending infectious grooves with meaningful messages. Live performances, their explosive, joyful, and improvisational shows, such as their legendary Woodstock set, broke down racial barriers and electrified audiences of all backgrounds. Enduring influence, their sound and style have been sampled, covered, and emulated by generations of musicians, cementing their place as foundational figures in modern music. That's why I think that they might have even more of an impact. They have had more of an impact than Hendrix. Hendrix was just one guy. Sly and the Family Stone was one guy too, but it was a whole band, right? And they have definitely, I think, been more sampled than Hendrix, which says a lot because Sly was like a master of having these incredibly beautiful just sound bites, right? like for example, on Sing a Simple Song. I was just listening to that. I believe it's his sister Rose has this thing where she's going, hey bud, all right, she's going like, yeah, 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 yeah. Right. It's a very infectious little sample. Um, it's just a very cool song with a great message. But anyway, let's talk about Woodstock. Right. They were invited, like Hendrix. Sly and the Family Stone kind of also was like they were like a shooting star, right? They went off like a rocket. They achieved superstardom. Hey, bro. In a very short time.
So how do you make it close on?
I don't know. I'll tell you later,
Did
bud.
you glue it?
Yep, I did. Close the door, bud. Close the door. Close the door. They achieved superstardom very quickly. They were invited to Woodstock, obviously, and this all happened in like a year or two, that they became world famous and superstars, right? Is their music timeless? Absolutely. Sly and the Family Stone's music remains vital and relevant decades after its release. The themes of unity, social change, and self-expression are universal, and their innovative sound continues to resonate with new audiences. Their songs are frequently cited in greatest of all time lists, and their influence can be heard in contemporary music across genres. Here's a quote. Those songs not only inspired an era of youthful rebellion and independence, but also had a potent effect on the course of modern music in general. Sly's DNA is traceable to every cell of the musical stratosphere. In summary, Sly Stone's genius lies in his ability to break musical and social boundaries, create timeless songs, and inspire countless artists, making Sly and the Family Stone not just great, but truly legendary. Let's go a little deeper, though, about Sly. What made him who he was? And let's talk about the rise and fall of Sly. People talk about this, right? That he went off like a rocket. And by the mid 70s, he was washed up, more or less, right? Not really. He was still doing good music and everything, but it wasn't the same. And he had this great impact. He had this, you could say it was a decade long, maybe less than a decade. It might have even been, I think it might have been like more like 5 years, maybe 6 or 7 years. And people point to the fact that his music got a little darker and a little bit more, in a way, deeper, more thoughtful even. I think his 60s music is thoughtful too, right? He had a lot of wisdom in his lyrics. If you listen carefully, if you listen to his messages, there's a lot of wisdom there. And I think Cynthia Robinson, his trumpet player, who later became his wife, who's also amazing. Like she carried the band in a lot of ways. Trumpet playing. I admire anyone who has the ability to play the trumpet like she did, right? And have that kind of stamina. That takes real stamina to be able to play the trumpet as well as she did, for as long as she did. I played the trumpet too, growing up, but I never became that into it. Got more into the guitar myself, but I have great admiration and respect for trumpet players, because I think that takes a lot of it's like you have to be an athlete to you have to be an athlete to be a musician who does concerts, regular concerts. You have to be in shape, right? But I think to be a trumpet player at her level, playing with that much energy, takes a lot, right? And so I wanted to bring up this issue, which is drugs, right? I don't know about Sly with psychedelics. I'm sure he took his share of psychedelics. I have not looked into that. I could ask AI right now, but I won't do it right now. But I know that he took his share of he did his share of cocaine and PCP, and I think people maybe look down at him for that. I wouldn't judge the man, because let's look at it this way. Say you got to play an epic show at Woodstock, right, 1969, but you got to go on at 3 in the morning, right, and you're fucking tired, and you're of course the audience is gonna um, is gonna give you the energy, right? The audience support and everything, But I would think, as a musician playing to 500,000 people, right, and wanting to get it right, you probably would want to take something to help get you up, right? And I'm sure Sly did that. I'm sure that was probably his main reason why he got into it, was because it was well known that if you want to get up for a show, you take something like cocaine or PCP or whatever it was, and it helps you to perform at the level that you really want to perform at, that you have to perform at, to you know to bring the smiles and get the energy going. Now, obviously, the downside of it is you get addicted, right? And so people point to the fact that Sly became an addict. That was a big reason for his downfall, if you want to call it a downfall. I would just say that he did what he needed to do. He made some of the most brilliant music ever in a very short period of time. And then, like Jesus, by the time he was 33, he was done. He was out of there. And the amazing thing is that he lived another 50 years. Right? He didn't die young, like a lot of the artists did. Hendrix, 27, he was not part of the 27 club. He was not part of the 33 club. He lived another 50 years, and he was largely out of the limelight for most of those years. And the cool thing too is that he wrote a memoir right before he died, which I think is really cool. That he got that out there. Anyway, am I going on too long? Maybe I am. But what are some of my favorite Sly and the Family Stone songs? I think that Everyday People is a timeless classic. Everybody's a Star. Dance to the Music, Dance to the Medley. If you've ever heard that, you should listen to that. If you've never heard Dance to the Medley, so many great songs. Hot Fun in the Summertime. It's amazing to think that he did all that. Not just him, the band, right? And you got to give the kudos to the band as well. That they were an amazing band. And one of the great things I would say also about the band is that when I think of the band, I think of like the rainbow harmony, right, of all the different voices. Like, for example, on Dance to the Music, you have all the different voices coming in and adding to the color of it, right, creating the rainbow of sound. And a lot of, you listen to Sly and the Family Stone, and a lot of other music sounds one-dimensional in comparison, because there were a lot of elements in the voices in harmony, the different voices in different parts, singing different parts. And in a lot of ways, Sly showed us how it's done, right? He basically got in there. He said, "This is the way you do it, right? This is what music is supposed to sound like." And I think that I listened to some of the interviews. I'd like to hear more of the interviews of him when he got older. You know, but he's still, you could still see he's just a beautiful guy. Really, I'm sure he had his flaws, his failings, his times when he did shitty things, as we all have, right? But his, I think his real spirit and his soul, his heart comes through in the music, and I think really that's really what matters in the end, and that's how I would like to remember him. That's how I would like to remember everyone. Is their the the beauty that they really are, that shines through when they're doing what they love, and you can tell that he was doing what he loved. He really was fully behind it. He was in love with music, and so was his band. They were a family, and it really shone through in the music, and yeah, you know, I'm gonna be forever a disciple of Sly and the Family Stone, and so thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and oh, you know, so much. It could say so much about this. The fact that he was a DJ also before he became a world famous musician. But I'm sure his when and the thing about when he was a DJ, let me just say this last thing, which is that he did not only play black music, right? And I think he got into a little trouble because he wanted to play like the Rolling Stones. He wanted to play the Beatles. He wanted to play, probably played the Beach Boys too. And and I think what he did, and what made him a universal, let's say a universal artist versus a parochial artist, was that he combined all these influences together into one. So thank you, Sly. Thank you for listening, and we'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, and yeah, as Sly and his band sang, "Shine, keep on shining, shine, shine, shine."